All right, so get this. Today we are going deep on Carl Jung and what he had to say about faith.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It is. And I'm already getting all these like aha moments from the source material.
I can imagine.
I can't wait to unpack it all.
Let's do it.
So if you think you know about faith, think again. We're not talking about blind faith or, religious dogma.
Right. Not that kind of stuff.
We're going deep on Jung and how he, as a psychologist, saw faith as this like inner experience, something that's already, like inside us.
Like a blueprint.
Yeah, like a hidden blueprint shaping, our reality.
It is fascinating how he challenges that whole blind faith idea.
Totally.
And he presents something so much more active. It's
Yeah.
more like aligning yourself with this deeper reality that's already there.
Okay, so hold on.
Yeah.
How do we get to that deeper reality?
Yes.
Like, if it's already there, why don't we all have like this unshakable faith?
Great question. Well, that's where Jung's concept of the ego comes in.
Okay, hit me with it.
Well, think of the ego as that part of us that's always looking for proof.
Like, show me the receipts.
Yeah. It wants that external validation.
Mm-hmm.
It wants certainty and control. And you know what? That actually disconnects us from this deeper self,
Oh, interesting.
which is, where this knowing comes from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like the ego's over here, like, show me, show me, show me. And the unconscious is like, dude, just trust me.
Exactly. But the problem is, how do we tune into, that quiet voice?
Right. With all this noise, how do we tune in?
Yeah, when the ego's always screaming for proof. The thing is, the unconscious speaks a different language.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not about, logic. It's
Mhm.
not about reason. It's more about communicating through symbols, dreams,
Whoa.
even those weird coincidences.
Like synchronicities?
Yeah.
Hold on. So you're telling me those weird, like, random things that happen
Uh-huh.
could actually be a way to tap into this deeper reality?
They absolutely could be. Think
Yeah.
about it.
Wow.
Synchronicities, these meaningful coincidences that seem to defy, logic.
Mhm.
They're evidence that our inner and outer worlds are connected.
That's kind of blowing my mind a little.
I know, it's wild.
Yeah. It's like the universe is trying to send us a message, but we're too busy looking at, Instagram.
Exactly. We're just not paying attention.
Okay. So let's say we start to, actually pay attention to our dreams and those weird little coincidences.
Yeah.
How does that actually help us build that unshakable faith Jung talks about?
Well, Jung believed that true faith comes from encountering this thing called the self.
Okay.
It's the eternal, unchanging part of us.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? One way we encounter it is through these, totally irrational experiences.
Whoa. So it's not about convincing yourself of something intellectually.
No,
It's more about experiencing it on a much deeper level.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting.
Lay it on me.
Most of us haven't reached that level of inner realization.
No, not.
Because we're still stuck in our egos.
Makes sense.
We're super identified with all those outside influences that shape our beliefs.
Right. We're trying to fit in, follow all the rules.
Yeah, and we lose touch with that inner voice.
Okay, so how do we break free from all of that? How do we start listening to that inner compass?
Well, that is a great question. And maybe this is where Jung's concept of individuation comes in.
Okay, tell me more.
It's this journey towards wholeness, integrating all the parts of ourselves, even the ones we don't really like.
Wait, are we talking about the shadow here?
We are.
Okay, hold on. Shadow sounds kind of scary.
It's not that bad.
Okay.
But it does represent all the parts of ourselves that we think are, unacceptable.
Okay, I see.
The stuff we hide from everyone.
Like our deep, dark secrets.
Kinda, yeah.
So how does facing this shadow help us, grow our faith? It seems like it would do the opposite.
Well, think of it this way. Our fears and doubts, they often come from those parts of ourselves that we haven't dealt with. Okay. And the shadow, if we just ignore it, it can project outward.
Interesting.
Yeah, it creates obstacles and conflicts that mirror what's going on inside us.
So if we're always fighting our own shadow,
Yeah,
we're basically creating our own problem.
you got it. And here's the mind-blowing part. Jung believed that our beliefs, especially the unconscious ones,
Mm-hmm.
they can actually shape reality.
Wait, are we talking The Secret and manifesting here?
Not quite. It's more complex than that.
Okay.
Jung was drawing these connections between the psyche and the outer world.
Like they're reflections of each other.
Exactly. So our inner state influences how we see reality, which then shapes our experiences.
Wow, that's pretty trippy.
It is. And that's where his idea of the unus mundus comes in. It suggests that the mind and matter, They're not separate, they're connected.
So you're saying that strong beliefs can actually change things.
In a way, yes, especially the beliefs that are in line with our unconscious.
Okay, I'm getting some serious Matrix vibes here.
I know, right? It's a lot to take in. But the question is, how do we actually start to understand this connection, in a practical way?
Yeah, good question. How?
Jung thought dreams were super important for this.
Really?
He saw them as these messages from the unconscious,
Okay.
and they reveal our true beliefs. They tell us about the state of our faith.
So it's not just about, figuring out what the symbols mean.
Right.
It's also about, paying attention to the overall vibe.
Exactly.
So if my dreams are, peaceful and hopeful, that could mean I'm, really connected to the self.
You got it. He saw dreams as this direct line to the self.
Wow.
And they show us where our faith is strong and where it's weak, where we're in sync or out of sync.
I'm suddenly really interested in my dreams.
I bet.
What about people who, never remember their dreams? Are they just missing out?
Not necessarily. Cultivating faith is a process.
Okay.
A journey of being aware and exploring. And there are other ways to tap into that unconscious wisdom besides dreams.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more. What else can we do to grow this unshakable faith that Jung talks about?
Well, as we've said, noticing those synchronicities is huge.
Right.
Those meaningful coincidences, it's about being present and, watching for the signs.
Yeah, like when things just fall into place.
Exactly, like magic.
Even when we had no idea how it would work out.
Those moments are like little whispers, reminding us that something's guiding us.
Even when we can't see the big picture.
Exactly.
And the more we notice those patterns, the stronger our faith gets.
Right, it's like we're building trust.
It's like exercising a muscle.
You got it. The more we use it, the stronger it gets. Like, those people who've had these incredible spiritual experiences?
The ones who just know.
They often talk about this overwhelming sense of knowing, a certainty beyond logic.
Like it's not just believing, they know. Deep down in their core.
Exactly. Would you say those experiences are examples of them, like encountering the self?
Definitely.
I think Jung would agree.
That source of, real faith.
And for Jung, faith wasn't just some personal thing. He saw it as a psychological necessity.
Interesting.
He felt like without faith, we lose our sense of meaning.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
If you don't have something to believe in, something that gives you purpose, it's easy to feel lost.
Totally.
Yeah.
Faith gives you this sense of structure.
Yeah.
Like you're part of something bigger. But remember, Jung wasn't into blind faith or dogma.
Right.
He was all about finding it within.
It's not about following someone else's rules.
Exactly. You got to find your own path. But if faith is so important, why do so many people struggle with it?
It's a good question. Why is doubt so common?
That's a big one. I think part of it has to do with how we see the world now.
How so?
We're obsessed with what's tangible, what we can measure.
Okay, yeah.
We dismiss anything that can't be proven scientifically.
That's true.
And while science is great, it's not the only way to understand things.
Right, like intuition and faith. We've kind of neglected those.
We have. We're so focused on our rational minds that we've lost touch with that deeper part of ourselves.
The part where meaning and purpose live.
Exactly. And that's why Jung's ideas are so relevant today.
He reminds us that there's more to reality than meets the eye.
There's a whole other dimension that we can access through faith.
And surrender.
And surrender, right. It's about remembering that we're not just rational beings, we're spiritual beings too.
We crave connection and meaning.
We do. And Jung saw faith as this bridge between those two worlds.
It helps us live more authentically.
Yeah, it does.
This has been awesome, by the way.
It's been great talking about this.
This whole conversation has been so insightful. But I got to be honest, I'm still wrestling with this idea of surrender.
I get it.
It feels almost wrong to let go when we're talking about something as powerful as faith.
I understand. It's a tough concept to grasp. Maybe exploring Jung's idea of the shadow will help.
Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper into that. How does this shadow connect to surrender and faith?
Well, let's explore that in the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back. We left off talking about surrender.
We did. It still feels a bit upside down when you think about faith as this strong thing. You got to hold on tight.
It is a bit of a paradox. Jung's whole approach is really different.
Yeah, it is.
He's basically saying that true faith isn't about, needing to be certain. It's more about being open to the unknown. trusting something deeper.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
It's like, imagine learning how to swim.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you're all tense fighting the water, you're going to sink.
You willed it.
But if you relax and just kind of surrender to it, you float.
That makes sense.
It's the same with faith. You can't force it. You can't control the outcome. You just got to trust the flow.
Even when you don't know where you're going.
Exactly. And Jung noticed that the people who really struggle with faith, they're usually the ones who are most afraid of uncertainty.
Yeah, makes sense.
They're like clinging to logic and control because the unknown is just like terrifying.
It's like our egos want to believe we're in charge, that we can predict everything.
Right, but life's not like that. It throws curveballs all the time.
All the time.
And that's where faith comes in. It's that willingness to say, okay, I don't have all the answers, you know?
Yeah.
But I trust that something bigger is going on, like even when the path isn't clear.
It's that feeling deep down that even when things feel chaotic, there's still order.
Yeah.
But how do you tap into that when we're so used to, using our logical minds?
Remember how Jung said the unconscious mind is like this source of wisdom?
I do.
The conscious mind just doesn't see it. So by letting go of control, we open ourselves up to that wisdom.
We let it guide us.
Exactly.
It's like we're tuning into a different frequency. But how do we actually do that? Like in real life?
Yeah.
Surrendering sounds great in theory.
Putting it into practice is hard, though.
It is.
Jung thought of cultivating faith as a daily practice.
Okay, like what does that look like?
Well, things like meditation can be helpful. And mindfulness. Anything that quiets the ego.
So that inner voice can, come through.
Exactly. But it's also about noticing the patterns in your life. Those synchronicities.
You mean those moments when things just, click into place?
Yeah. It's almost magical. Like, even when you had no idea how things would work out.
Mm-hmm. It happens.
Those moments are like little messages, reminders that you're not alone.
Yeah.
That something's got your back.
Yeah, I like that.
And the more you notice those patterns, the stronger your faith gets.
And start to trust more.
Right. It's like you're exercising a muscle. Think about those people who have had, profound mystical experiences.
Yeah.
They talk about this feeling of knowing, a certainty they can't explain.
They just know.
Yeah. Do you think Jung would say that's them encountering the self?
Absolutely. That source of unshakable faith.
It is powerful, right? And he didn't see faith as just a personal thing. He thought it was necessary for our psychology. Like, without it, we just feel lost and meaningless.
That makes sense. If you don't believe in something, if you don't have a purpose.
It's hard to feel grounded.
It is.
Faith gives us structure. It makes us feel like we're part of something bigger. But Jung wasn't into, blind faith or dogma.
It's about finding it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. But if it's so important, why are so many people struggling with it?
Why is doubt so common?
That's a big question. I think it has to do with how we see the world now.
Okay. How so?
We're so focused on what's tangible, what we can measure.
We want proof for everything.
We do. We dismiss anything that can't be, scientifically proven.
Which leaves out a lot.
It does. While science is important, it's not the only way of knowing.
So we've kind of forgotten about intuition.
And faith.
Yeah. We've lost touch with that side of ourselves.
The part that craves meaning and purpose. And that's why Jung's ideas are so relevant today.
He reminds us there's more than what we see.
We can tap into this other dimension through faith.
And surrender.
Right, surrender. It's about remembering that we're not just these rational beings, we're spiritual too.
We need that connection.
We do.
Yeah.
Jung saw faith as this bridge between the two.
So we can live more authentically.
Exactly.
This has been mind-blowing, honestly.
I know, it's a lot to take in.
But I still feel stuck on surrender. It feels, almost wrong to let go when it comes to faith.
I get it. It's hard. Maybe Jung's idea of the shadow can help us understand it better.
Okay, let's talk about that. How does this darker side of ourselves, how does that connect to surrender and faith?
Let's dig into that in the last part of our deep dive.
All right, so back to the shadow, this hidden part of ourselves.
Yeah, the one Jung thought was key to deeper faith.
I gotta admit, it's still kind of scary to think about, really embracing those parts of ourselves that we usually just reject.
It's understandable. It's where we put all the stuff we don't like, the stuff we don't want to admit is there.
Exactly. So how does, accepting those supposedly bad parts of ourselves, how does that actually make our faith stronger?
Well, think about it. When we deny these parts of ourselves, they don't go away.
Right.
They just fester in the shadows and mess with our thoughts and actions, even our beliefs.
Okay, I see that.
It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Yeah. You can try, but it's going to pop up eventually.
Exactly. And that's where surrender is so important.
Okay.
If we try to control the shadow, we're fighting ourselves, and that prevents us from finding that unshakable faith.
So how do we actually surrender to these parts of ourselves? It feels kind of dangerous,
It's not about giving in to every bad impulse.
Right.
It's more about acknowledging the shadow with compassion.
So we're not saying it's good, we're just saying it's there.
Exactly. And remember, the shadow isn't evil. It's just a part of us that we haven't really understood.
Just like we're bringing it into the light instead of pretending it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that process can be tough.
I bet.
But it's super important for building real faith. When we accept all of ourselves, we're not fighting anymore.
It frees up energy.
A ton of energy. And that energy can go towards, growing our faith and connecting with that deeper self.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I still feel a little lost on the surrender part. Like, how do I know if I'm doing it right?
It's about letting go of control, trusting that there's something wiser guiding us.
Okay, so I need to trust myself more. Trust that deeper knowing.
You got it. And that trust comes from experience, from paying attention to when things work out, from seeing the synchronicities.
Right, those weird coincidences. They're like signs.
Exactly. But what about when things don't go our way?
Yeah, what about when it feels like surrender just leads to failure?
Well, that's part of life too. Faith isn't about pretending everything's perfect.
So it's about having faith even when things are tough.
Yeah, it's about trusting that there's a deeper meaning, even when we don't see it.
This has been an amazing deep dive. It's definitely changed how I think about faith.
I'm glad to hear that. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one last thought from Jung.
Okay, I'm listening. What is it?
Jung said that faith isn't about convincing ourselves of something we're not sure about. It's about remembering something we already know deep down.
Remembering something we already know, what does that mean?
It means remembering that we're all connected to something bigger than ourselves, that we're not alone in this universe. We're part of that divine spark, that source of everything.
So faith is about remembering who we really are, that true self that's always been there.
That's beautifully put. And when we remember that, faith becomes effortless. It's just who we are.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you so much for this deep dive. It's been truly eye-opening.
It's been my pleasure. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, trust that inner wisdom you have.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey into Jungian faith. We hope it's inspired you to do some exploring of your own. Keep diving deep.